The great generation, Generation X, boomers, millennials, zennials, Gen Z. We're talking about it next with GenX Talks next on Retro Serial. Hey everyone, I'm Ian C. You're watching Retro Serial. On today's program, the General, our GenX dad from GenX Talks, joins me today for this stimulating conversation. Let me warn you in advance, because generally you come here to Retro Serial to hear lighthearted stuff about growing up Gen X. We talk about like breakfast cereal and Coke products and Pepsi products and our favorite television shows and things like that. Well, on today's program, we're going to be taking a hard right turn straight into issues of culture and issues of politics. If you're sensitive to these kinds of things, maybe you want to skip this program, but if you are brave enough to weather the conversation, I would encourage you to listen. I think it's a great conversation, and it certainly was awesome to hear him talk about his views on the culture, and you get to hear some of my views on the culture, because I know a lot of people ask about those kind of things, and I don't generally tip my hat to those on the program, but today I do. So with that said, I just want you to be forewarned. There is some cussing in this program as well, and I just want to let you all know that before we jump into today's program. With all that said, we're just going to get straight into today's program. But before we do, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this on your favorite social media. Those things right there, they mean the world to us, and they're free for you to do. So like, comment, subscribe, that means a lot, and then share it on your favorite social media to get the word out about this program. Also, if you want to go a step further and support us financially, throw a little scratch our way, help me grow this YouTube mogul empire, you're welcome to do that. We got two ways of giving. The first one is just a Patreon page where you'll find two levels of support on there. There's the Cornflake Club, which is just $3 a month. It's like a tip jar saying, hey, we like what you're doing, please keep it up. And then there's the Honeycomb Hideout, which is $5 a month. But with that, you get most all videos and most all podcasts, with a few exceptions, at least one day in advance. And I understand if you don't want to, have something even as small as $3 coming out of your account every month, or maybe you want to give a big donation. Well, we have that available for you as well. Check out our Venmo. It's at Singularity_production. So if you want to give just a one-time smaller gift or a one-time larger gift, you're welcome to do that as well on our Venmo page. With all of that out of the way, let's get into today's conversation. Well, hey everyone, I don't need to make another introduction because you've already heard my introduction to this podcast and program. But just so you know, I am talking to Gen X Dad. He also goes by the General. And
Yep.
I've already promoted the channel. I'm going to promote it again right here. I'm going to promote it at the end as well. If you have not subscribed to his channel, you need to subscribe, especially if you love things all Gen X and growing up Generation X and some of the issues. This is a channel worth your time. And as I kind of already said, we don't, at Retro Serial, it's a little tiny bit more lighthearted. We normally get into culture, movies, music kind of thing. We're going to verge into some more serious topics because that's the theme of this gentleman's channel.
Wait a minute. You decided to bring me on to go deep. Is that what I'm hearing here? We can't just talk about Twinkies and crocodiles. Great.
I just did three things you didn't know about monster cereal for Halloween. So yeah, but no, we get, I mean, my audience, they get a little hungry for something a little bit more substantial, but it's a lighthearted kind of a thing. But it's a subject that I've actually, a lot of, when you have a channel and you have like any amount of following, you always have some people who want to know a little bit more about you personally.
Oh,
And
they do. Yeah, I could see that.
yeah. And so
I'm just telling you that I'm a little upset that I had to get rid of all my research on Twix and Cheerios now. I mean, I'll just throw it out to the side and we can start over. Whatever you want to
do. Well, first of all, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit, not just from me, so they're not hearing it secondhand, but firsthand, a little bit about your channel.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to point out to all of your listeners that he started his whole podcast here with a lie. It's not my channel. It's not. It's my kid's channel. The kid did this. GenX Talks. It's a Gen Z kid. It's Gen X mom, and they refer to me most of the time as Gen X dad. Generation X. That makes it simple. And GenX Talks was his baby, his brainchild. He started that. Well, if you want do you want me to tell you how we got here? Is that what you just kind of okay? I guess it was about 2018. TikTok came upon the scene and everybody wanted to be TikTok famous. And my kid was no exception. The problem was that he didn't know how to do it. He's sitting out there trying to figure out how to be TikTok famous, like, 10 million other kids. And he's putting out videos and he's trying to be silly and he's trying to be stupid. Nothing's working. So he can't get anywhere. I mean, he gets like 2,400 views was his best video. And it was some stupid thing where he put his phone in his mouth and did this to music in front of a mirror. And I'm like, you give up on your dreams, son. What are you doing? So he devises this thing with his mother where he's like, wait. He goes, that grumpy old persona dad has about get off my lawn type of thing. And my wife says, yeah. She goes, well, he says, can we do that with dad? And she says, what do you want to do? He says, I want to put him on a stool under a light and I want to film him and I want to ask him questions. And my wife says, he is never going to go for that. Not even a little bit. I'm just not going to sit on a stool and answer stupid questions from some Generation Z idiot. And so he tries for like 6 months and I keep telling him, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not a part of it. Well, eventually my wife gets back involved and says, listen, you're going about this wrong. Wait till dad's doing something, like he's in the garage, he's got his hands, kind of come up beside him and say, hey, what do you think about this? And he'll look over his shoulder and snap some answer. Maybe you can use it. So he did a couple of those and they didn't pan out. Then one time he said, what was his first one? He's caught me in the garage and I knew what he was doing. I mean, I'm not stupid. He had his camera. I knew he was doing something for filming. I mean, it's candid camera kind of. I know what he's doing. I just don't give a shit. And he says, what do you think about Common Core math?
Yeah.
And I said, Common Core math is like 2 + 2 is green. And how do we all feel about it? That was my answer, because that's how myself and my generation, that's what Generation X is thinking, that Common Core is just full of shit. There's 2 + 2 is green, and how do we all feel about it? Then he says, how do you feel about, was it self-driving cars or electric cars? I think it was self-driving cars. And I said, oh, self-driving cars, I've got it all figured out. As soon as I see one on the street, I'm going to take my truck and put it into the wall on turn 4. It's not going to happen. I've seen Terminator. You have a self-driving car near me, I'm going to assume Skynet has taken over the world, and I know my role. We start running these robots off a cliff. I understand what to do. There was a third part to it too. He condensed it real quick. Anyway, that was it. And then all of a sudden that video got 700,000 views. And then he went back for another one and another one and another one. And it's a long story on how he's able to do these. Yes. Because he asks me 6 times a day, Dad, what about this? And none of them are usable. I'll throw something at him. I'll tell him to leave. He can't use them. Maybe 1 out of 4 or 5 he can actually use. Right. You guys don't see all that stuff where he's pissing me off all day. All you see is the one that everybody likes to see him. Now they're called ambush videos, and he's more clever about them. But that's how it got started. That was it. It's his brainchild completely. This is his channel. His mother and I work for him. We help out when we can, and that's it.
I noticed that when that was actually going to be part of what I asked, because I noticed that you're kind of the face of the live stream, but when I actually go and watch the videos, it's him coming up and asking you questions. And I did kind of wonder, was he the one who actually started the video, started the channel or not? So now I kind of know. When did you start doing the live streams though?
Let's see that we started those um on TikTok. Everything started for him on TikTok, and he kept telling me we can go live, and I go, why would we go live? Who would want to watch live? He goes, and now
A
you
lot
got to
of people.
remember it. Well, apparently, you got to remember it. Growing up in the age I am, Saturday Night Live was a big thing with me. So I kind of got drawn into that. I always wanted to be on the radio when I was a kid. I always wanted to be an actor. I sucked at both, so I didn't do either one, as you might have noticed. And so when the live stream option came up, I said, well, how does this work? And I wasn't sold on it until he said people will comment live. And I said, wait a second, if I'm going to say some stuff on camera with him and people are going to say stuff back, then I'm interested. Now that's more of a conversation with me. That's, it's more like sitting around a bar, sitting around a campfire.
Right.
I'll say some stuff and then he can read the comments or I can read them. And then I could say, oh, Joe 159 says this. And there is a limited amount of interaction. So he started doing these ones. He would set up these sets in the garage with my toolboxes and stuff, and then his mother would read the comments to us, and we kind of just grew from there. We started off with no people. I remember one time we were on TikTok, and I think we went like 10 or 15 minutes and had 2 people that showed up.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And
I've been
that
there.
that's how you start. You give it your best shot and see what happens, and it just grew. We got into the first week. He had 20,000 people, and then 30,000, and then 100,000, and the audience kept growing on TikTok. And we started to begin after a year. We decided to branch out to other platforms just to see what was there.
Mhm.
Well, during that time, we went from 2 of us being on these shows on TikTok, and we don't do them as much anymore, to me being on the live streams, because now I feel like I have a second family, inside these live streams where the same people show up all the time. We talk about some things, we share some things, and we get new people all the time, of course. But the idea is that you have the same. You feel like you're at a bar, you're around a campfire. It's very familiar, and that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, and I'm hoping some of that will rub off on me. I haven't quite gotten to where you are yet. I'm still working on that first 1,000 subscribers, but I mean, congratulations on what your channel's doing, and congratulations on what it's about.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
We need a voice like yours more and more. We need a reasonable voice, and that you said Common Core math. I don't know. Do you watch a lot of stand-up comedy or no?
Oh, tons. Every chance I get. I think comics are our last hope for free speech.
Right, right. Well, there's a comic called Nate Bargatze. He's about my favorite comic, and he talks about Common Core math. He says Common Core math is like when you use the front door, but instead of using the front door, people say, "Hey, will you go around the house and meet me right here?" Again, I mean, yeah, most people use the front door. We all grew up using the front door, and he says, and when you look at Common Core math, and because he had to break it down for his daughter, he says you see math in it, like regular math. You see that.
Yeah.
Well, just do that at the top. And it's not like we were all getting math wrong, like we were getting incorrect change at the store.
No,
Like,
yeah.
like darn this
Well,
old math. I can't wait till the new math comes
yeah,
out and I
that's
get
the
right
thing, is why
change.
are we changing it? Because let's be fair, it's not simpler. Let's be clear on
Yeah,
that.
it's
It's much
not.
more complicated. So that what you just said makes sense. Well, why did we change it? Were we getting the wrong answers? Like you said, were we getting the wrong change at the grocery store? Was this a necessary change? Thank God it arrived, because we were all screwed up before. Thank God it's here. What are you
Yeah,
talking about?
he didn't know how to do nothing. Well, let's delve into this then. Let me just ask you kind of a more serious question
All right.
about your concerns with the newer generation. What would you consider like for this generation that's growing up? They're about to turn 18, 21 around this time. They're about to go into the voting booths. They're about to do these things. They're about to take over companies and start their own thing. What for you is your main concern or concerns?
Well, boy, you just how long do you have?
God, this
Because
is this is the great thing about the internet and podcasts. I have a while. It's
okay,
not
well, then
like
you
I.
can edit everything out that you don't like and doesn't make sense. But I will give you an honest answer, and I'm going to tell you that I do not speak for all of Generation X, of course, but there are a ton of people that are coming along with some of the things that I'm about to tell you that seem to be moving in a direction. So let me break it up as quickly as I possibly can. I very much think millennials and Generation Z are very different in how they think, how they plan what they do. And I'm skipping over the whole millennial thing. We can talk about that later. But Generation Z is the one you just described, the one that's coming
Yes.
up right now. And I am not talking about the 20% of Generation Z that is out there that is flipping plastic bottles and trying to make them, a guy flips a plastic bottle half full of water, and when it lands upright, they all leave the room running and screaming like they saw a ghost. Not those guys, not the Tide Pod eaters, not the ones that are eating Tide Pods on a challenge. Okay. I'm trying to set them aside. Now,
Okay.
I believe, and I'm speaking about the other 80% of Generation Z, and this is the weirdest thing. I have a lot of interaction with Generation Z. People would say, "Well, what you're telling us right now. You got one kid and three of his friends." No, I pay attention to his classes. Okay, well, that's 30 kids. All right, well, his high school. I'm really in tune with the kids at his high. Okay, one high school in America, it does not show a trend. All right. How about the fact that GenX Talks draws in quite a few, thousands of Generation Z that have opinions, good and bad, about what we do? Well, that's not a good measuring stick. Okay, let me go one further. I listen in on the kid when he does his own interviews, his own things, when he's on Twitch, when he's gaming, and he games with people, and people have conversations all over the country.
Yeah.
Now he could talk to 40 different thousand kids his own age over the course of a month. Now does my opinion count? Now have I got a good sample group?
Mm-hmm.
You can keep denying it for so long, but eventually you got to give in that maybe some of these things carry some weight. And here we go. The weirdest thing that I have seen with Generation Z, and I can't wait for mainstream media to start talking about this, is they have a movement going on with no organization. There's no website that says, all right, we're rising up against the government and the establishment, and here's a website. Here's what you should think and say. No. No website. There's no leader. There's no mission statement. There's no organization. This is just a group of kids, a generation that is now doing stuff on their own. And here's the first example. These kids, and one of the things I get mad about the most is teachers getting in classrooms and indoctrinating kids. And I've heard it, I've seen it. Kids have given me hidden videos from their phones, listening to teachers say, now, I've just clearly explained to you about global warming. I've given you the research, and I've given you the professors and the books and the lectures and the websites. You're with me now, right? And they want the kids to go, yeah, global warming, we're with you. This sucks. It's terrible. And these kids aren't.
Mm-hmm.
This Generation Z is going, yeah, you know what? That's cool and all. I'll tell you what, I'll go home and I'll do some homework. I'll make up my own mind. And the teachers are flabbergasted. Go, whoa. What? I just explained it to you. You're the child. I'm the teacher. I just instructed you. And the kids are going, listen, I'm not trying to be rude, but I'll go figure this out on my own. Can we get back to math? You are a math teacher, and this is a math class, right?
Right. Okay.
And the teachers are like, well, it's my job to impart upon you, what I'm thinking. And in an English class and in a history class. And these kids are politely going, I got it. Shut up. I'm not just going to blindly follow you. I'll just go make up my own mind. Now, if I could have taught them to do this, I would have done it. If I could have said, listen, stand up to your teachers politely and just tell them you're going to figure this stuff out on your own and you'll do your own homework. That's the way I want you to be. Don't be rude, but be polite and tell them to get back to teaching whatever it is they're supposed to be teaching. But I didn't do that. In fact, I don't think anybody did that. I think that there's just now, I'm looking at this and they're going, I got it. Just could you stop? And now teachers are getting upset. They're hanging around. in the break rooms going, I can't believe my class just told me they'd figure this out on their own. Don't they know I'm trying to help them?
Right, right.
Generation Z's got a movement of telling people in authority, we'll do this on our own way without this. This isn't a revolution in the 60s.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
So
a very quiet movement.
So do you think Gen Z is kind of coming back around from where millennials were leaving it? Do you think there's more hope for Gen Z to kind of be a little bit more reasonable? Because let me run this idea past you, because
Yeah,
this is kind of what I see happening right now,
sure.
and a problem that I see in the world. And that is, you and I are from a Generation X, and I feel like a Generation X and boomers are more connected together than, say, a millennial. And where I saw the problem starting to shift was not being able to agree to disagree. We grew up in a time where you didn't want to be a sore winner and you didn't want to be a sore loser. And we learned that as a value. Okay, this side won, this side didn't. Okay, next year or the year or 2 more years or 4 more years, we'll get our side. Now what we've had is we come to a place where we can't tolerate the other side winning. We have no tolerance for that. And what we used to be able to do is have a dialogue about this. And now, and because when you can dialogue, you can kind of like maybe promote your idea. Maybe you can persuade some people your way. Maybe you have ideas that you say, okay, that's antiquated. I can see it your way. But now instead of dialoguing, what they want to do is not have the dialogue. They want to shut you down. They want to say, we don't want you to talk, because they're so concerned about protecting their ideology, and they don't want it to be compromised in any way. And so they are just like, okay, we're not going to dialogue. The dialogue's not going to happen. It's going to be my way. And if you don't see it my way, there's no you and me talking about it. There's just, you don't get a voice. You don't get shut down.
Yeah, you touched on a lot in there. Was there a question that I missed? Because
No, well,
I got what you're saying
yeah,
completely,
I
but I
was
didn't.
wondering what you think of that idea. Do you think that factors into it? Do you see any problems
I
with it, or?
I think when the first place you started off saying was about the differences is Gen Z coming around. That's how you
Yes,
led,
yeah, yeah.
and I would say if we circled back to that point, and I agreed with what you're saying, that the disconnect is huge. But I think that Gen Z perhaps looked at millennials fighting with boomers, looked at millennials fighting with Gen X. I mean, imagine this generation standing there. Imagine there were really groups of people, and we're all standing in a parking lot, let's say, and the boomers are yelling at millennials, and millennials are blaming boomers for everything, and then Gen X is blaming boomers for some of their stuff, but we're trying to stay away from millennials going, you did this to yourselves. We warned you. And Gen Z looking at everybody fight and said, I think we're done. Gen Z didn't have a way to fit in and go, all right, I'm pissed at you for this. I'm angry at you for that. And they didn't have any of that. They just kind of grew up, in my opinion, looking at all this and going, whatever, man, you guys are all fighting about everything, these generational wars, and it's old versus young. Some of it's typical stuff that just happens. But man, you guys have taken this to a whole new level. We'll just figure it out ourselves. I really think they just backed away. They didn't want to pick sides. They weren't getting involved. They didn't know enough at 12 and 13 and 14 years old. You don't know enough as a Generation Z to be able to argue about the Cuban Missile Crisis. You can't argue economics. So you're just like, I don't even care. Whatever you guys are fighting about, who cares? I kind of think that pushed them into the whole attitude of, we'll figure it out ourselves. We don't care what you guys are arguing about. You guys are arguing left versus right, conservative versus liberal, Democrat versus Republican, and Generation X versus millennials versus boomers. We don't care. We don't know enough about it, and we don't care. Just leave us alone. We'll figure this out on their own. But that is definitely where, now maybe I don't have it right how they got there.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely what I see where they're at is the pendulum is swinging the other way. It is absolutely starting to swing the other way. And I'm not talking about the Tide Pod eaters, because you can make fun of them all day long. I'm talking about the other 80% that just want to start enjoying life and they want to figure it out. They have a completely different attitude.
Yeah, I see that as well. Do you see that the dialogue's beginning to pick back up between a Gen X and a Gen Z, where that dialogue was shut down with millennials?
There's a lot of that. Millennials just I think some conversations hit a brick wall as you well know, that you can argue about people in Black Lives Matter, or if people call you a racist. I mean, you can only argue so far. The discussion ends up, it won't go any further. People
Yeah.
have drawn their lines and they're done arguing. And I think millennials and Generation X have hit a wall in discussion. And so I think that Gen Z now has opened the discussion. I don't see them in my house, in my family, in my immediate family. I have Gen Z kids and millennial kids. They don't
Okay.
talk to each other at all about life. They'll talk
Okay.
sports. They'll talk, regular stuff, but they're about deep, meaningful directions in course of life. There isn't any of my Gen Z kids or the Gen Z friends that come over here and hang out. They're not interested in talking to millennials at all. They'll talk to Generation X all day long,
Yeah.
and listen. But you're
Yeah.
right. There's a breakdown in dialogue. Like, no, we don't even care what you're saying. The Gen Z does not appear to be discussing stuff with millennials at all.
Yeah. Yeah. When did you first notice, or it became a concern for you? Where you were like, oh, something's happening here with the millennial generation. So with that millennial generation, when was the first time that you, if you can think back to, maybe it wasn't a specific time, it was probably like a growing concern, but when was the first time that you really said, whoa, this isn't right, what's happening now?
I want to say that it would go back to the 90s for me when I started to realize that Generation X, what one of the a lot there's obviously crossovers. Boomers have millennial children at some point. Gen X has millennials. Gen X can have a Gen Z. There's crossover in the generational parent child relationships and how the dynamics. But for the most part, I'm speaking about Generation X having millennial children. And I noticed that when things were going wrong, we were the first generation, Generation X, that couldn't parent alone. Um, all of a sudden, we found ourselves co-parenting with teachers, with coaches, with
Right. Yeah.
policemen. It's like, you know what? Stay out of my family. We were the first generation that went to jail for parenting. You abused your kid. No, I spanked my kid. And there's a difference between spanking a kid on the butt and discipline and abuse. People that abuse children need to be buried under the prison alive and choked to death.
Right.
You don't ever harm a child. But they all of a sudden there was parents that were having to deal with outside influence. There was counselors, there was doctors. They were like, well, I'm going to get involved in this family. I'm going to get involved in this decision. Now, if you think a child is being abused, yeah, you got to do something. But that is maybe 1% of what's going on. All of a sudden, there was this big movement with people. Teachers would tell a 12-year-old, you have rights. And if you're not being parented the way we think you're supposed to, if you don't like it, you come tell us. I got some phone numbers. I got some people we can call. We'll get some people involved. So as Generation X, you're trying to parent and raise your child, and you have to you got to tell people at your church and school and coaches and counselors and doctors, like, okay, could you all leave us the fuck alone? What are you doing? But they insert themselves in the kid's life. We see it today when they're doing things like they're trying to do hormone blockers for changing children's sex and things at 13. Stay out of it. Let us parent the way we want to parent. There are children, not yours. That's when I noticed the change, was when I realized I was trying to parent, but I'm competing with anybody that my child interacts with. They all of a sudden had an opinion on parenting. They were going to interject themselves parenting. And now Generation X is grazing kids going, well, you know what? If you don't like what's going on, don't blame me, because I tried to parent you, but we had 50 other people that you as a child were listening to when you got to be 17, 16. And boy, you really like to listen to those people. You had rights. You were somebody. No, you're still a child figuring stuff out, and I'm still your parent.
Right. Right.
You asked me when things started to go. It was when I realized that parenting wasn't just myself and my wife anymore. There was 25 other people sticking their hand in it, and too many cooks in the kitchen is what it turned out to be.
Yeah, that is an excellent point, and I haven't actually thought of it in that perspective. I mean, I have my own thoughts on where it went wrong and stuff like that, but I can't even agree with you more, because I do remember, and some of that was a little bit needed at times. Like I was raised by a single mother. And so there were times where the church stepped in to help me, to drive me to school, to, help with groceries and things like that.
Yeah.
But then it gets out of hand and it gets so ridiculous that it's just like it becomes preferences, even preferences become laws. It's like, well, you only brush your mom makes you brush your teeth twice a day instead of 3 times a day. I mean, we got to take her to jail. It's 3 times a day. Everybody knows that you have to brush after every, and it gets petty, but these petty things become these huge mountains.
Well, it's like you said, you just what you said, a church can step in and do some good, but there's churches that can step in and do too much and become too involved. Liberals, for the most part, liberals have a way of taking a good idea and running it over a cliff. And they do that with everything. It's not that's a good example. What you just said about you can be involved as needed.
Yeah.
But they become over involved. It becomes their mission. And most people that I've confronted on this over the last 3 decades, let's just take an example of a teacher, and it can be anything. It can be anything. But a teacher will pick a child and they will become as involved as they can, and they will change the parents. They will get child protective services involved. They will do everything they can so that what? I mean, they do it under the heading of I'm saving this child. But they don't have to deal with the family situation after they stir it all up. Though they stir it up with all the shit and the child protective services, and they call the cops, they get people involved, and they put it out there. All the other teachers, you all need to watch this child. But they sit back, and I've confronted them on this. They sit back at home watching TV with a glass of wine in their hand, and just their life is fine. What's it like in the household that you just stirred up that night? There's so much strife and anxiety and anger and yelling. You did this. Yeah. You stirred everything up, but you walked away clean. And so if you do that with 30 children, you're upsetting 30 households that you don't have to live in. You don't have to go to the day-to-day stuff. You just stirred it up because you feel good about yourself. You go home, well, I did some good today. Did you?
Yeah.
Right. You're convincing yourself you did, but maybe if you'd have just stayed out of it, maybe Generation X could have raised the millennials to be a little bit stronger and a little bit more independent and a little bit less like sheep. But boy, I'll tell you, there was some I gave up on. A couple of my kids, I'm like, all right, fuck it. You got all these ideas from there. They'd bring me teachers and websites and all this other influence. And of course, the web, social media and the internet, huge influence on these kids. Co-parenting with when they can pull up a website and go, you're not parenting right. Look right here. You're not doing this right. Look right here.
Yeah.
What a competition. So I gave up. Now these same kids are looking at me going, well, I did everything they said. I went to the college they said. I took the classes they said. I got the loans they said. I can't get a job and everything sucks and it's your fault. I said, whoa, hold the phone. I told you all this shit was wrong. I told you go that way. You said no. Society and everyone I know around you. In fact, you're the only adult that is saying this. I got 30 other adults behind me saying do that. I said, fuck it, go do that then.
Yeah.
And now here we are. And I believe me when I say I rub that shit in their face every chance I get. I go, I told you so. Now maybe I'm not such the asshole, am I? I tried to warn you, but you wouldn't listen. And they're still mad. My kids are still mad at me. They're still mad at me like, well, you should have made me listen to you.
Well, I'll tell you what, growing up takes it out of you, man. I mean, seriously, you have all these ideas until you have to pay your bills. Until you work and then and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. You mean, okay, I lived at home with mom and dad and then I go somewhere else and well, they're not just letting me live there. They have to do something and then they get their check and they realize, well, what's this money that's coming out of my check? What's that? Wait a minute here. Then suddenly you start realizing, you start growing up. And it happened with us too. I think the difference is that for some reason, and I'm not saying this is all Gen X or this is all millennial, but for some reason we had the self wherewithal, maybe because of who we were raised, to say, hey, we were wrong. We need to get in line with how life actually works. Where sorry, are you there still?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Where My computer just did something weird. Oh, I thought, ooh. Where in the millennial generation, just like what you're saying, instead of growing up and going, okay, we got to get it together. This is not going to work. They started just blaming. They just started saying, "You're the one that's at fault. You're the one to blame.
Yeah.
You're the one." And then I also really liked your idea there too about how the liberal will have really good ideas, but wrong implementations for them. I think that one of the big problems is well, we all see this. Look, I don't normally get political, but I mean we're going to get political here, and that is that they want the government to solve things. And like these are the same people who deliver your mail, right? I mean, this is the same. It's just like I get that there are people who are poor who can't pay for their medicine, and I
Right.
understand that. But me as an individual has way better leeway to help that person out than a governmental institution.
Well, and it used to be that way. It used to be if you look back at any point in the last 80 years or so, if there was a problem with a family, I don't know whether the husband left or maybe he died, the family would take over. Like, okay, you guys need groceries, we can come help. You guys need medicine, you need a ride. It was a family. Now, if you didn't have a family that could help, none around, or maybe they were just too far away or not enough people, then you say, okay, well, the neighborhood would help. Your neighbors would step in the 40s and 50s. There was neighbors said, okay, all right, so you know what? They need this help. Can you guys give them a ride to you got them for school? Okay. Can you watch the kids after school till she gets home from work? And the neighborhood, it was a community that would come together, and they never thought a thing about it. It started with family. If that didn't work out, the community would help. If that didn't work out, it went to a church. Church would say, okay, you guys have tried your neighbors have done this to family. We'll step in here. We have a congregation. Let's see if we can help.
Yeah.
And then at the very outside, if there was troubles or problems or things that were beyond that, you could go to the city or the town, maybe even the county, and but that's not the way it started. That's not where you began. You didn't run into trouble and go, okay, where's the federal government to help me? Whoa, have you tried checking with your family? Have you tried your neighbors? Have you tried the church you go to? Have you tried? What do you mean you just run to the government for the help?
Yeah. Right.
Didn't used to be that way. It used to be, like you just said, run, like you mentioned, run to the government. No. It was self-help first, and then the circle got bigger. That's the way it was.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a way more liberty to, if I know somebody needs some medicine and I've got the money, I can go buy it for them. Where you create a government institution, and what the government institution does is that first of all, we're all giving money to this, and they're employing people who are making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And like, well, that money's not going to that person who needs the medication. It's going to this guy who runs it, and he deserves a salary. I don't
Well,
disagree
sure.
that he deserves
Once you create
salary,
an organization,
but
you got to have people there. Yeah, I got it.
but all the money's going there instead of going to the person who actually needs the medication.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you said, would you rather give $100 a month to the government and hope they spend it on people in need correctly, or would you take your $100 and go buy some bags of groceries and take it right to the people you know that need it?
Yeah.
Which, like you said, you have much more leeway when it's just you.
Yeah, totally. I think so. And then you have more of a, is this person scamming me? Is this person really genuinely in need? You have more of a leeway to make that decision yourself. And I just see it more as a personal responsibility kind of thing, and just being good stewards with what God has given us.
And going back, that's the way it used to be. It used to be that way.
Yeah. So do you, when we're looking at, and I just want to look at like just kind of 4 generations here. Okay. I want to look at boomers, Gen X, millennial, and Z, just as far as you're concerned. What do you think and you can take this any way you want to take it. You can take a piece of it or what do you think is the defining feature of each of those generations? Like if I asked you like what makes a boomer different than a Gen X? What makes a Gen X different than a millennial? What makes a millennial different than a Gen Z?
I think we could all get into the stereotypes on that, and stereotypes, they're not wrong. People get stereotypes, groups, minorities, everybody gets a stereotype because of behavior. So you could say, millennials are whiny. Are they really all whiny? Well, quite a few of them are publicly, because that's how they got the stereotype. So with saying that, there's probably some truth in how you view groups. Going back to boomers, you touched on something for me that's kind of difficult for me to not get in trouble with people I know. Um, I've been discussing recently boomers. We'll start with them. It's kind of funny. The one thing that sticks in my head right now, currently, and there's many facets to every generation, but boomers were always, this is the way you should do things.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay. Sometimes we took their advice, sometimes we did not. But if you did not, you're not allowed to ask them for money or help ever again. Almost every boomer I know, it's like, well, you didn't do what I told you, so no, I'm not helping you. Had you done what I said, had you followed, had you gone to college, or had you not married that person and not done, I would have been there for you. But I clearly told you what to do. You didn't do it. You're on your own. There are so many boomers, and of course, older generations seem to have accumulated more money than younger ones. That would make sense. They withhold that help, because you didn't do what they said. That seems to me, for some reason, to be a defining characteristic of a lot of boomers. Yeah. It's like, well, I told you what to do and you didn't do it. You're on your own. Generation X it seems to be following that same trend. It seems a lot of us are like, okay, look, you want to go down this road. I'm telling you, you're better off going down here. This is a mess. And we loan them the money. We help them do stuff. They go down that road. They get all fucked up, and we turn around and go, all right, I'm not helping you anymore with this. I helped you once with this. I let you, bruise your own knees. You got all skinned up down here. That. What do you mean you want me to do it again? Now you have a better plan on doing the same thing. No, and I don't want to help you. Generation X seems to be, all right, we'll help you, but when if it doesn't work out, come back and go this way. That's the way we kind of think.
Yeah.
Millennials seem to not have an opinion. And again, it's not all of them. But millennials follow along again, a lot of millennials were parented by 25 different people, and they pick a course of action. Okay, so I'm going to do this and this because you said so. Now I'm good to go with this, right? You guys say I'm good to go here, so I'm going to go down this. They do everything they're told to do. And if it doesn't work out, like you said, the first thing they do is run back to the government to fix it.
Yeah.
And they whine, they cry about it, going, I did everything I was supposed to do. And then you got Generation X, for the purpose of this discussion, in blue Levi's and a black leather jacket, leaning up against a brick wall, smoking a cigarette, going, we didn't tell you any of this. They all did. In fact, we told you not to follow them. In fact, I would have been happy with millennials thinking on their own. They might have got it right versus being told this is where you're going and this is what you're doing. So don't blame anybody. Well, now they're mad. Now they're mad they didn't listen. Now they're mad they stepped on their own dick about this. They did it to themselves. They followed along. They didn't listen. They didn't even think for themselves. So where else are they going to turn? They go to the government. Forgive my loan debt. Give me free stuff. And they're kind of doubling down. I've been following you guys this whole time, and it's not working out. Help me now. Yeah. That's how I see millennials. A lot of them, most of them maybe. And then we go back to Generation Z. I think that Generation Z is looking at all this because it's easy to see it. And they look and go, okay, well, I'm not going to be like boomers. I'm not going to be like Generation X. And God help me if I turn out like millennials, I'll go shoot myself. And I think I'm just got my finger on the pulse of what I can. That pendulum is swinging with Generation X. I know Generation Z. Everyone is so down on Generation Z. And I got this feeling that they may just save everybody. There's a chance they're thinking for themselves. And that's all I could ask for.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question, but that's as best as I can get.
No. And I think, you brought some things up that I think are really good. Have you ever heard of a film series? It's a book too. He's a Christian philosopher. His name's Francis Schaeffer, and it's a film series. It's free on YouTube. It was done back in the 80s, and but it's really good. It's called How Should We Then Live? I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No, haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, well, he talks about that older, like you're talking about, that older generation that seems to be a little bit withholding. Like if you would have been on board, we would have helped you. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of there doesn't seem to be a lot of grace given at that level.
Yeah.
There's no repenting there. You okay, well, yeah, I'm glad you see it my way, go about your business kind of thing. And he talks about the idea of that there was that generation that was just really interested in personal peace and affluency. Just like, okay, yeah, that's great, you leave me alone. Okay, I got my cut of the corporate pie, and that's what I want. And if you want to be on board, great. If you don't want to be on board, then that's fine too, but don't bother me. Just don't bother me. And I think you're right about our generation. We're a little bit more forgiving. We don't want to help, we don't want to further perpetuate
Yeah.
their ignorance, but we want to help them when we can. We came up,
Well,
yeah.
there's two things too. Is one, let's go back another generation, go back before, and I'm not slicing up all the little generations in between, like the silent generation. No, I'm going back to the greatest generation. The greatest generation did not behave like boomers. My grandparents, my great uncles, and
Yes.
all their friends who I knew very, very well would sit with you and go, okay, now that didn't work out. We'll help you. We'll give you some money. We'll get you going. The greatest generation helped Generation X with the only expectation is, could you please be a good person? There's some common decency. Say please and thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Firm handshake. Look someone in the eye when they're talking. They would give you these values and say, okay, we're going to help you get along here. You're a young couple getting married. Let's get you going. They would help you financially or move in at their house and live with them. They would do all these things. Their expectation was be a good person.
Yeah.
That was what the greatest generation thought. Now, boomers were do it my way or I'm not helping you. There is a very big, it jumps right over boomers, and the greatest generation and Generation X in some aspects are very similar. I don't want to say equal. There will never be a generation like the greatest generation ever again that endured and triumphed as much as they did ever. But there's a lot of similarities on how Generation X and the greatest generation responded in this area, in the way we're talking, the discussions where you and I are having.
Right. Yeah, I see that too. I mean, I do see that. I mean, my mom was a boomer, and I could see the seeds of, like, and even in friends that I grew up with, I could see the seeds of, let's say, the hippie movement, which was a pull away from that great generation,
Mm-hmm.
beginning to sprout, even in my own generation. And I even saw it with discipline. I have a story about I was raised where you spank kids. I got spanked, but you had to spank them God's way. You couldn't just beat them. You had to
Right.
let them know what the infraction was, and you had to have these rules. Well, my grandfather wasn't that way though. My grandfather just would be, I mean, it was like if he had enough, he just he'd beat you. And so much so that you would be like, what's this really about? Is this something about something else? Just, what are you really mad about, Grandpa?
Right. Yeah. You,
uh
you get people on all sides. Speaking generally, of course. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I see the seeds of that, and it is interesting because I think even if you go back a little further, I think there was less of a generation gap between like the greatest generation and their parents. There's less of a
Oh
generation
yeah.
gap.
I think as far, yes, I agree 100% with that.
Things really changed with the boomer generation, and I think the hippie movement really kind of introduced, hey, we're not what these people are. It wasn't a continuation, it was, we're not what these people are. And then we grew up, I mean, kind of the idea with us is that I think the one pinning defining feature is we're a little sarcastic. We're more sarcastic than the previous generations.
Well,
And
that's for
even,
damn sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we grew up with some disappointments. We grew up getting the decoder ring and finding out it was a plastic piece of shit. And,
Yeah.
going, oh, okay, all right, people are lying to us here. You kind of
I'm
got
still
to,
upset that my Lucky Charms X-ray goggles that I sent in for couldn't see through shit.
yes,
Oh,
right, exactly. So, so we grew up in that sarcastic generation. I think that we tried, and I don't know if it was misguided or what, but we tried to correct that to some degree, but it turned people soft. It's okay to get knocked around a little bit. It's
oh
okay
yeah.
to get fooled. That's how you learn.
Well, there's
But
helicopter parents right now that don't want their child to get dirty. They don't want them to ever be bullied even once. They don't want them to ever fail. They helicopter over them with every decision they make. What you said is exactly right. It's okay to get dinged up once in a while. It's okay to suffer through some things. It's okay.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you're watching a kid, you tell the kid, hey, don't run by the pool, and then they start running. Is this like, okay, if they fall, they're not going to die. Let them fall, let them scrape their knee, and then say, are you going to listen? You learned. The helicopter parents don't run by the pool and go and grab them and pull them back or whatever. And don't ever let them suffer the consequences of their behavior. And that's a big one that I see it a lot is they just don't let them suffer the consequences of their behavior. They just
Sure. Yeah. And they
immediately
do it. They
rescue them.
protect them all the way through school. Parents will now go in and yell at the teacher. The teacher is always the problem, not the kid. The kid gets a job at McDonald's and gets fired. The parent goes in there and says, you can't fire my 20-year-old. You're the problem, not my kid. You're going to have a long road if you're on that train. I'm
Gosh.
telling you.
Well, with that said, where do you think this is all heading? Like, what do you think is going to be the next step? If you could, and I know you can't predict the future.
I
I know you
I'm
can't. I mean,
well, I'm
you
hopeful.
look like Nostradamus, but I mean, you can't predict the future. I know. So,
Well, if I could predict the future, I'd be sitting on a mountaintop someplace with a long line of people paying to get in for advice. So clearly, I'm not that guy. But the it's kind of funny. I was just having a conversation. I have a millennial daughter. Her husband is overseas. He's doing a tour in the Marine Corps over there, and he's in Japan right now. So she asked if her and my granddaughter could move in while he's gone, and I said, of course. And I just had a conversation with her this morning about she's trying to be very heavy into politics and understanding the culture, and she's been doing it for years. And one of our conversations this morning led me to tell her there's a few points that I'm noticing that if they can take hold along with this generation Z that is already pendulum swinging in that direction, we might have a shot at it. So I'll go over them real quick because they're fresh in my head. We just talked about them. I reminded her, I said, do you remember the backlash that Netflix had over Dave Chappelle? And the way Dave Chappelle is, in my opinion, he is just lifting the weight of the world on his shoulders to keep the government and society up here from crushing everybody. He's doing such a good job because he's right. He's funny. He's hilariously funny. But boy, does he stick it. Does he jab right where it needs to be said? And they had one of the biggest woke movements ever against him. And they went to Netflix and said, we are going to organize every person on the planet against you. And they did.
oh wow,
And all Netflix did was renegotiate his contract a little bit, ask him to change a little bit, which he didn't do. And he's still there. And the whole woke movement was like, what? Are you out of your fucking mind? We just said we were organizing everybody. They were on every platform, every TV show, every radio program, every live stream, every podcast. It was a full court press.
yeah,
And they lost. They
yeah,
lost. Next one was Spotify when they tried to get Joe Rogan removed.
right.
And it wasn't just, they say now, well, it was a small faction of the woke movement. We're just, no, it wasn't. Again, it was all of you and you failed, because Joe Rogan had used the N word in his conversations. And he even said, I wasn't saying it. I was quoting
Quoting
somebody.
somebody who said it.
That's
Yeah,
all I did was I just said, this guy walked out and said this, N word, this, and then he goes in with his discussion. And all that Spotify did was say, all right, we heard you. We're going to pull those 15 or 18 episodes off, and that's it. They were losing their fucking mind over this. They're like, you got to be kidding me. Now, there is instance after instance after instance. The new term that's come out in the last couple months that I love, go woke and go broke. Disney, the same group pressured Disney in their movies. They're showing everything transgendered, anything that they can put in there to say, look, we get along, we agree, we're with you. Look, we're supporting you. Look, the cast of characters that they use, the things that they do, the things they say, that they changed all their terminology at all their theme parks.
yeah.
And you heard they replaced their CEO, right? They
No, I've not
replaced
heard that
him.
yet.
They did it I think it was either last Sunday, the Sunday before, in the middle of the night, they had a big conference call with this guy and said, "You're out," and they're bringing back Bob Iger, who ran the park,
Oh,
ran everything for 30 years before. And that is, you do not replace your CEO if everything's going well. You don't do it in the middle of the night. No press conference, no podiums. They just quietly said, "You're fucking out. This dude's back in." And Bob Iger's like, "I don't ever want to run another company again." They're like, "We'll give you whatever you want." Okay, I'm in. Then this was on YouTube. They showed some videos. They're having kind of a tour of Disneyland here in Anaheim, which is near where I live. And they had the old guy, the old Bob leaving, and the new Bob coming in. And these people caught, he had a little name badge, Bob, and people caught on, the employees caught on who was there, and they're like, "Bob Iger's here." They started booing the other guy and cheering for Iger in the park live. And they're like, "Okay, we gotta get out of here." The security people like, we don't need this kind of press. Let's just go woke and go broke. Now, the last thing, I was watching a deal last night on Hollywood. And I know I'm skipping through these things really fast. There's so much more to all of it, but Hollywood has now gone, we're done with this. We're not hiring because of diversity. We're not hiring because of the woke movement. We're losing money. Our films aren't making money. There's, we tried to hire this actress because of diversity, even though she wasn't the best one for the role. We tried to hire this costume and wardrobe guy because he was part of your movement, part of your minority. He wasn't the best guy. We're done. Very quietly, the CEOs now and executives at film industry are just not answering questions anymore. You ask them about what is this change and what happened to diversity, what happened to the woke, what happened to getting and including everybody, and you know what they say? They're out there. I've read the statements. They're out there. "Well, we always stand by each minority group. We support all of you, and we love everybody, and we want everybody to be included, and no one left behind." The press, they're just reading the press release. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't answer one question. But when you hear people off the record, the directors are going, "I don't care anymore. I've got the studio executives telling me I can hire who I want to do what I want. They want the best film. They want the best script. They want the best actors, and they want to make money."
Yeah.
So I don't have to, worry about how many blacks or whites or browns or yellows or how tall people. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm allowed to just make the best movie I can make. Now, you start adding all these little things up and all these things all the way back from when Spotify made their decision and Netflix, and now the big change with Disney, and now you're hearing about Hollywood. Oh, no one's ever going to come out and say we're done with this stupid shit. They're not going to say that.
Yeah.
But boy, when you see that pendulum, that big pendulum begin to swing the other way, I believe not only is it happening, it's happening. And you ask me, where do I see it going? If these things can stay, if these things can catch on and keep going, if it starts working and all these places are making money again and people are becoming profitable again, these are businesses. These investors are there to make money. Right. They're not there to make friends. They're there to make money. Let's be clear on that. If these things continue that trend, they will just politely ignore all these movements and go, "Yeah, we're with you. Here's some money for your cause, but we've got our blinders on and we're making money and we're having fun and everybody's getting along. If you are the best at your job, we'll hire you." That's it.
Right. Yeah.
They're moving in that direction, and it's changing. The whole thing is moving that way. Now, will it stick? I don't know.
To me, I think it's got to, because at the end of the day, you want to make the best product possible.
Right.
And the best product is what's going to sell. And as soon as you get interest groups going in and saying, "No, you got to change this, you got to change this," it's like, well, that wasn't my vision for what I think the best project was going to be.
Yeah.
And then as soon as that happens, the entertainment value starts going down, and less people are I don't want to watch a bad movie. I don't want to go to the show to watch
they don't care anymore.
That's bad. I'm going to go to watch the movie that I think's the best movie, which was the movie that you had without all the special interest groups involved telling you how to make my movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they wedged themselves in there with movies saying, "Look, your movie's going to be successful. You're going to make hundreds of millions of dollars. What is it going to hurt if in the Avengers we just have a scene where they're going up against Thanos and all of the women kind of gather together, all the women are all in one spot for just one scene to show the solidarity and the importance of women. What's it going to hurt? Nobody's going to care. All right, maybe that's true, but you that and going, well, come on, just insert our agenda. It's not really going to detract from your movie. And well, all right, maybe we could probably get away with that
Yeah.
if that appeases you. But then it was, well, what's it going to hurt if you have one of our group as a director or our group as a main act? And what's it really going to hurt? You got a good script. Well, all right, and they just keep again. You take an idea like that, you run it over a cliff. You went too far with it,
Yeah.
and now people just don't care anymore. And I'll tell you the prime example. And on the live streams that I do, I can't say Black Lives Matter or BLM. There's algorithms on YouTube and Facebook and they pick that up, and the algorithms and just a computer will pick that up and shut you down or flag you. So I discuss it like this, and you'll get this right away. I say there's 3-letter groups. There's 3-letter names. We've all seen it. Remember that? It's on every baseball jersey, every end zone. You remember that with everything it's every time you go down the street, there's posters, there's billboards, there's bumper stickers. Every commercial had this until you gave up. In my day, it was Save the Whales. In my day, it was Save the Whales, Save the Whales. People would put bumper stickers on stop signs everywhere you went. It was Save the Whales, Save the Whales, Save the Whales. Every commercial, every TV show, Save the Whales, Save the Whales. Till I finally got fed up about the fucking whales. Now, it's not that I don't like whales. I love whales.
Right. Yeah.
But
Sure.
Jesus Christ, you guys crammed it down my throat for so long. I could give a shit about whales anymore. You did that. You made me not give a shit anymore because you saved the whales until I couldn't stand it. Okay. We've all gone through this in the last couple of years the same way, just with different letters. We're not saving the whales anymore until everybody got so fucking fed up. Was it a good idea? Yeah, maybe. Was it something you could say and bring up and talk? Yeah, probably. But you fucking ran it over a cliff to where you ruined it and nobody cares anymore. The next person who comes up in modern society and says, save the whales, you're going to get smacked because nobody cares. It just like, stop. Oh, you don't like whales? I love whales. You've ruined it, though.
Yeah. We don't want to hear about it all the time.
No, it's like,
we don't want to hear about it every single day. We don't need the agenda being shoved down our throat all the time.
Every place you turn, you're like, oh my God, I can't open up a bag of chips without there being some logo on the back or some paragraph on. America burns out on shit like that. It's funny that people don't realize that you can't just keep oppressing us in every area of life with your agenda to where we don't care and we lash out and we fight back. What reasonable person wouldn't do that after years of that?
Right.
The very thing you're fighting against, you're actually doing to us in a different way. And Jesus Christ, you get done. Mm-hmm. I don't care about the whales anymore. Fuck the whales. I'm done.
I have a little bit of a sticky question to ask you, and if you don't want to answer it, I totally understand.
All right.
But when we're talking about the future, do you see religious truth being involved in helping change the focus of the next generation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's not even a sticky question. That's a great question. I think with this pendulum swinging, you're not allowed to be a white Christian male. We are the ultimate sin right now. We are the enemy. And I think as that pendulum begins to swing the other way, some of those stigmatisms that people have been lied to and pointed, those are the enemy. I think those get lifted. I think religious liberty comes back to some degree. Like, look, everyone can have their own thoughts, their own religions, and all the religions can discuss and argue and prove themselves right and wrong amongst themselves. Mm-hmm. But I think the blanket policy of just pushing down against Christianity and Catholicism, I think that I hate to use the word oppression again. That's not the word I want to use. But I think that stereotype of hate that goes on with that white male religion is what they call it. I think it gets lifted, and I think that becomes more free to be who you want to be, which is ultimately what they're pushing for, isn't it? Let us be who we want to be. Okay, good. I want to be a white Christian. Oh no, we didn't mean that.
Not
you
that.
can do anything else, but not that.
Not
I
bad.
think I think that one part becomes to be included in everybody gets along. Everybody lives and lets lives. I think that once a lot of this lifts off of there and the control lifts off and the banging around and screaming at everybody lets up a little bit, I think religion begins to take hold again and leads the way.
Yeah.
Because people at their core look for moral values. They look for something to hang on to. And I think that's a great focus.
Well, yeah, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, if I'm a bag of protoplasm and you're a bag of protoplasm, we're just banging around. At the end of
Yeah.
the day, I mean, I might like it, you might like it, but you might like chocolate and I might like vanilla, and that's really what it boils down to. If I mean, if I am just if there is no God, let's just pretend for a second there is no God, and I am just a result of a chance matter universe, then at the end of the day, what one bag of protoplasm bumps into another bag of protoplasm, apologies and being nice is just a social idea. There's nothing
Yeah.
really to root it back to. So I see it as I see it as an opportunity, at least, to kind of tell people about the gospel and things like that, and get the at least the opportunity to have it in the public square again, to say, hey,
Yeah.
you might disagree with me, and I get it, but let's agree to disagree. Don't just cut off the conversation. Don't
Well,
just
you
shout
can't
it
right
down.
now. Like you just said, you can't put that in the public square. You could not walk out with the Bible and begin reading because someone would shut you down that you're traumatizing them, you're triggering them.
Yes, right.
Although literally anything else that is said and done is okay and acceptable and promoted, except white male Christianity is the worst thing ever. And you can't
Right.
do it. I think once some of the things get lifted off of all of us, I think some of that will come back and be acceptable and be normal and be okay.
Yeah. Well, I've got one last request for you,
Sure.
and that is, I absolutely loved that story about how you went on a hunt for your daughter.
Uh, yeah, I was drinking. I probably should have told that story, but
Oh
yeah,
no, oh no. Well, and then and I'll just summarize the story because I'm sure you probably don't want to tell it again here.
that's a long story.
It's a long story, but yeah, but basically what had happened was is your daughter was in some trouble and she was off, and you got some friends, and one of them was a youth pastor, and
Yeah.
you were well armed, and you had some bad intel one time, and then you had some good intel. You had some bad intel, you busted into a house with your gun and said, hey, whatever, and where's my daughter?
Yeah.
I'm just looking for my daughter. And then you had good intel, but you were at the wrong
The
house.
wrong house. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
When
And
the
when you,
phone was ringing and I realized the phone wasn't ringing in the house, I go, oh my God, we're not in the right place.
yeah, everybody's got to check that story out. Everybody, that's one of the
Ah,
best stories. What I thought when you were telling that story is because you mentioned that they were opening drawers and going through them. And I'm like,
yeah.
well, your daughter's not in a drawer. What are they doing? And
Yeah, I don't that's a good question because we absolutely scrounging around trying to find any evidence of where she'd been living, where she'd been staying, I don't know. I know that they were you just kind of get into a frenzy in a bad way. Now you're so far down this road, you've crossed the line of being right and being a parent and being angry, but you go at it for we've been on this thing for hours. This all didn't happen in 45 minutes. This took a long time. And you're like, by the end of it, you look back and go, the fuck was everybody doing, but then you find yourself in the ceiling and you're in the attic, you're looking, you kind of lose focus on what you're doing. And the more the story built and the more time went on, I tell you, when it was all over, I sat there going, oh, I would not have handled this way next time. But it just kind of gets away from you. And you realize stuff like that, like, what are you doing? But at the time, when you're in the middle of the situation and everything's moving at light speed, you don't always think clearly. That's for sure.
right.
I'd be the first one to tell you that I am not perfect at that kind of stuff at all.
Yeah, that was just a great story. That was a great story. I encourage everyone to check that story out.
But it
Uh,
all worked out. Everybody was happy.
yeah. Good night. Well, the thought that came through my head when you said that people were looking through drawers is I was wondering if they were using your and it did end up not being true, but this is just what I was thinking as you were
Yeah.
telling the story, is I was wondering if they were using like your cause to like find drugs or something like
No,
that,
there
you
was
know?
no, there were the people that we were. There was only a small group of us, and they were not. They were good friends, or one was my older son. I mean, it was nothing was like that. This was just like figure out if she's been here. Figure out you go into someplace and you're in one of the you could tell it's a dot. Like you like come to find out there was two parents. There was of the girl that she was
Yes.
with. This is the father and the mother's house, different. But you go into the girls' room and like go through her stuff, see if your sister's stuff is in there, look in
Yes.
the closet, open the door, see if there. I'm sure that there was a sentence like that began that search. Now, don't go in the parents' bedroom. There's nothing in there. Don't no reason to do that. But you get to where you start down, like I said, you start down a path, and you're like you may have a good sentence of intention, and then the moment gets away from you, and you fuck up. Believe me, that story. I'm telling you, the reason I'm not proud of that story is in that story, as much good as I was trying to do, and as wonderfully as the story ended for everybody, and everybody was okay, I promise you, I fucked up in that story as much as I was doing good. But guess what? I am human. I am not perfect. I am not flawless. I promise you, I failed more in life than I've ever succeeded. Just to be clear, not trying to
Yes.
put myself on a pedestal by any means.
Yeah, right on. Well, General, tell us where we can reach you online. Tell us how to connect with you online. Or
Well, the kids, it's kind of funny. He showed me one day, if you just Google GenX Talks, that's
yes.
it. Now you can put a space on each side of the X. You can run it as all one word. I was amazed at how many places this pop up. Like the first 25 things you scroll through are GenX Talks. The main thing, his home is YouTube. That's his main home. But he's got two channels, a personal and a business channel on Facebook. He's got one on Instagram. His mother helps him with all the nostalgia postings that go on there. They do tons of stuff every day. Small presence on Twitter. Podcast that comes out every Thursday, just audio only, an
Yeah.
audio only podcast that is really, really growing. I can't, it's hard to even imagine that people would want to listen, but I guess they listen while they're driving or they listen while they're working. They just got one ear and it's really taken off. So if you want to know where everything is, go to the kid's website, genxtalks.com. He's got a pretty good laid out website. Every picture is clickable. So if you want to go to YouTube, click the YouTube picture. It takes you right there. Facebook, Instagram, podcast. It lets you link to anywhere you want to go through GenX Talks. It's right there. It even has your link up there with a picture of your guys' stuff, saying
Oh,
that I was going there today.
well,
So everybody
thank
that
you.
goes there can click around and see, what I was doing, and then they'll ask me about it. We'll do a show tonight, and they'll ask, hey, everyone he's got a Discord server, which I didn't know what a Discord server was, and he finally explained. He goes, it's just a bunch of chat rooms, Dad. They just have names. There's if you want to talk about guns and ammo, you want to talk about politics. It's just a list of like 13 chat rooms, but it's our server. Like you have to sign up. It's for free, but he goes, that's a big thing. He turned out to be right. He's got over 1,000 people in chat rooms in there, and one of them is this waiting for me to get done. There'll be people sitting in there waiting for me to get done in the room called podcast, going, okay, come tell us how it was. What'd they ask you?
Right on, right on, right on. Well, I will try to get this. I got to film an intro and then splice it together and then upload it and all this stuff. It'll probably be available by tomorrow. And I'll send you a link to it. And
Yeah, if you
stay.
send the link, we'll change it on some of our stuff to when people click it, they can go see it.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Thank you everybody for joining us on today's program. Stick with me after the program if you don't mind for just a moment.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a blast. It has been a blast. I love talking about this kind of stuff, even though I don't talk about it that much on the program. But I just want to thank everybody for listening. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Those are all free things for you to do. And they mean the world to us here at Retro Serial. If you're a podcast listener, please don't forget to share it and also write a review. That means the world. Make a star rating, write a review. That means the world to us as well. And if you are a podcast listener only, know that we do have more content on YouTube, more YouTube type friendly videos that don't quite translate over to podcast. But I don't care if you're only listening on podcasts. I'm glad you're listening wherever you're listening. It means the world to us. It really does.
You realize your ratings are going to go down with me on here, right? You realize that you're going to lose listeners. This wasn't a benefit for you at all.
Well, maybe. I don't know. If you're interested in helping us out on the program, you're always welcome to follow the Patreon page. And you'll find 2 levels of support. There is there's the Cornflake Club, which is just $3 a month. It's a tip jar just saying, hey, we like what you're doing over there. If you want to be on the Insiders Club, you got to join the Honeycomb Hideout. And with that, you get most all videos and most all podcasts, with some exceptions, 1 day in advance, or at least advanced enough you could say, I listened to it before you all listened to it. You get to be a retro serial snob. You're also welcome to help on Venmo, and it's at @singularity_productions. So thank you very much for watching. And do not forget, I will leave a link to this. If you're probably one of the few people who actually like my channel and you haven't heard of this guy's channel yet, please subscribe. I will leave a link to his channel in the description below. But I think what's going to happen is most of them are going to be from your channel. You do have the larger channel, my friend.
If it helps you out, I'm glad.
Thank you very much. All right. And we will have you on the program anytime. So, all right, everyone, stay retro, stay safe.